In this video, I'm gonna rank every fighter in Invincible based off how many fights they actually won, who is the undefeatable GOAT, and who belongs in the trash can. I was actually quite surprised with how certain characters ranked, so I'm pretty sure you will be too. Now, let's establish the rules of what even counts as a fight and which conditions must be met to win. We will count a physical conflict between two sides as a fight. To win in a fight, you must do at least one of the following. A. Defeat your opponent by any means, making them unable to continue the fight. B. Stop your enemy from achieving their goal, or achieve a certain goal yourself. For example, if a character dies during a fight, but in doing so they stop the enemy and their plans, that will be considered a win. We will also count draws. If both sides of the fight flee, or neither of them achieves their goal, it's a draw, so it won't affect the win rate. If only one side of the fight flees, it might be considered a loss, but only if that side couldn't stop their opponent or avoiding the fight wasn't a goal in itself. We will also not count off-screen fights. Everything that happens off-screen is not a win we can judge by our rules. But as long as the fight's result is on screen, we will consider it. For the fights where multiple people are involved, you only get a win if you're not knocked out when your side wins. And finally, spoiler warning. With that out of the way, let's start with the heavy hitters of Season 1. Guardians of the Globe. First up is Green Ghost, who only had 2 fights in the first episode. She and the other Guardians easily defeated Molder Twins, but then she got one-shotted by Omni-Man. Okay, let's be honest for a second. Green Ghost had the worst performance in the show, just by losing this badly. 1 win, 1 loss. Next is Martian Man. Sadly not a hunter. He had the same 2 fights Green Ghost had, but I have to admit that he did infinitely more when fighting Omni-Man. 1 win, 1 loss. Darkwing is a little bit more curious, because he had a fight with 2 robbers in Night City during the end of the first episode. The fight is fully on screen, so we have to give a win to Darkwing. In total, he has 2 wins and 1 loss, which puts him above some of the Guardians. It finally gets more interesting with the remaining half of the team. Werewolfman and Aquarius also fought Lizard League in Atomif special, but we don't see the aftermath of that fight. They probably did win, but we have to be consistent with our rules, so this entire fight won't come up again. Both of them get 50% win rate. Next is Red Rush, who is my favorite original Guardian for absolutely no particular reason. He wasn't in the fight with Lizard League, but he actually had a super short encounter with this electric guy, where he absolutely fucking bodied him in like 3 seconds, which is really funny to me. So Red Rush gets 66% win rate. Wow. Finally, let's talk about the Immortal. This guy gets trash talked every single time his name comes up, but I kinda like him regardless. Let's find out if all the hate is deserved, or if he's actually decent at his job. First the fight against Maulers, which he led and won. Then there's this short scene where the Immortal kills the innocent old guy, but it did happen on screen, so we will count that. Next is the infamous death by Omni-Man, and then 6 episodes later he gets revived by Maulers. I honestly think he could body both of them right here, but he actually doesn't really care for them and flees, which I will not count as a fight. Then he unfortunately gets killed by Omni-Man once again. In total, Immortal had 5 fights in Season 1 and only won 2 of them. Did his performance get better in Season 2? In the first episode, the Immortal loses to Omni-Man and Mark once again, but it's actually alternative Immortal, so he has his own separate win rate, so this L doesn't count for our prime one. The next 2 fights were along the Guardians. First one was a short fight against Lizard League, where they met Shapesmith, but we don't see the fight's result, so I can't count it as a win. Sorry, Immortal. And the next fight was in space against Secrets, which Immortal also won by admitting that Invincible did surpass him in speed and strength. The last fight he had in Season 2 was against Alan, which was pretty one-sided, and even though Immortal took another L diplomacy-wise, he didn't technically lose, so I'm giving him a draw on this one. This means that by end of Season 2, Immortal had 4 wins and 3 losses. Let's finally get to Season 3. The first fight he and other heroes had was against Doc Seismic, but Doc didn't really defeat any of them. He instead trapped them instantly and unfairly, so I don't really consider it anyone's loss. Once the cavalry arrived, all the heroes defeated the Magma Bugs and Doc Seismic, landing the Immortal yet another win. Remember when I said Immortal losing to Omni-Man in Season 2 didn't count because it was another version? Well, King Immortal is the same character, just from very distant future, so his loss against Mark is a fair game. But wait a second, is it a loss? Yeah, he couldn't defeat Mark, but he really never wanted to. He only wanted to die, and Invincible did kill him eventually, but Mark wasn't forced to do it. he just changed his opinion on the situation. So neither of them really lost, and I'll give it a draw. The next fight was against the Moller twins, and yeah, Immortal definitely lost that one. And the final fight in Immortal's book was against No Goggles Mark, which he did fairly well against, but ultimately still lost and retired. So what is his final score? 5 losses and 4 wins, which puts him at 44% win rate, the worst original Guardian statistically. But I mean, he's the only one still alive, so that counts for something. I guess Immortal should be winning more with the amount of power he has, but saying that he's a fraud is also a stretch. Now, before moving to the new Guardians, let's talk about the final heavy hitter of Season 1, Omni-Man. And let me tell you, Nolan has one of the highest win rates on the list. He defeats the Moller twins along with the Guardians, then kills all of the Guardians, and then an episode later he solos every single Fluxon. Once his cover is blown, Omni-Man destroys everything Cecil throws at him, the Nuke, Reaniman, and the Immortal. He didn't actually defeat Hail Mary because Mark did, but I will count it as a team effort. Well, what about the final fight Omni-Man had this season? I think it's generally accepted that Nolan defeated Mark without any sweat and just spared him. But if we look at the situation a little closer, then Omni-Man could not defeat his son. Nolan had a pretty clear goal in his mind: either convince Mark to join him or kill him. But he never managed to do either of those. Mark's words did more emotional damage to Nolan than Nolan did physical to Mark. A single line made Omni-Man question his goals for months, making him spare his son and the planet. We can't call Mark a winner either, because he realistically stood no chance against his father and only survived because Omni-Man fled and spared him. You might disagree, but I will count it as a draw. Neither of the two are really winners. No one was able to defeat him in Season 1, but in Season 2, the situation is a little bit more complicated. He has only one fight against the free Viltrumite sent to capture him, and while we can give him dubs for both Wider and Fula, the fight with Lucan was difficult to analyze. While Omni-Man did defeat him, we can't really count it as a win, because he underestimated his enemy, which beat Nolan in the back later. Literally. I think that Lucan both defeated Nolan and accomplished his goal of capturing him, even if he did it basically on 1 HP. This is Omni-Man's first physical loss. In Season 3, Omni-Man has only one fight where he, Alan, and Battlebeast defeat two Viltrumite guards sent to execute him. This is a clear win without any complications, so let's get to his final scoring. 9 wins: Twins, Guardians, Fluxons, GGA Agents, Reaniman, Hail Mary, Immortal, Wider and Fula, and finally the Executors, and only one loss, against Lucan once he did his sneak attack. And as I said before, I can't really count the fight with Mark as a win for Nolan, it just wasn't one, so we will count it as a draw. Omni-Man gets 90% win rate, which is one of the highest in this video. Enough with Omni-Man glazing, let's talk about the Teen Team and New Guardians. We start with the Queen, Atom Eve. She defeated those two criminals, Kill Cannon, Siblings, and that Dollar Store Doomfist. That's 4 wins in her own special. Moving on, she fought off all 3 Fluxon invasions, this buff guy in the Guardian tryouts, and Dog Seismic. Next season she defeats Kill Cannon again, and then unfortunately gets her first loss by getting swarmed and mind-controlled by Sequids, and that's all, she only has 2 fights this season. In Season 3, she loses to Dog Seismic in round 1 and then wins in the rematch. Her next fight was against JC, which she won pretty effortlessly. Then she and Mark fought 2 Invincible variants, and she definitely lost that one. I will talk about the fight with Conquest a little later in the video, but for now know that Eve took an L there. In total, 12 wins and 4 losses, which puts her at 75% win rate. Next is Robot, who gets 3 wins on the Fluxon invasions and defeats Machine Head and his goons. When it comes to the fight with Moller twins, I will actually count that as a loss. Rudy sees the damage done to his robots and flees, not achieving his goal of arresting Moller twins. Next is his fight with Sequids, which he, just like Eve, also loses. In Season 3, he wins against Dog Seismic and is forced to flee against the Mark variant, which I will count as a loss. 5 wins and 3 losses, putting him at 62.5% win rate. Next is Duplicate, who gets the same 3 Fluxon wins, defeats the same Machine Head goons, and then loses to Lizard League. In Season 3, she defeats Dog Seismic, loses to Maulers and to No Goggles Mark. Exactly the same win rate as Robots. And now we're gonna look at the GOAT of the Guardians, Rexplode. Fluxons and the Machine Head Goons give him 4 wins, but he unfortunately loses to Monster Girl on the tryouts. Say whatever you want, but she fucked him up there. I don't know. Then Rex defeats the Lizard League, the Squid Games, and Dog Seismic, and then he goes out with a boom and takes down a Mark variant with him to save his teammates. As we established in the beginning of the video, Rex did both defeat his opponent and stop him from achieving his goal, which is...
I'm gonna pop your head off, and then I'm gonna catch the others and skin them alive.
That. So, it's a win. If you wanna disagree and say that Rex failed at not dying and therefore it's a draw, well, I think at this very moment, before the fight between them even started, he already knew he's not making it out, so I'm pretty sure it wasn't his main goal, saving his team was, which he did succeed in. But wait a second, what about his fight against Multipole? While Paul did beat the absolute shit out of Rex, we know that he is far more durable than it seems, so I do think he would be able to continue the fighting even if it wasn't interrupted by Kate. I will count it as a draw. However, they did lose that American document or whatever, so it will be Rex's second loss. With that, his win rate is 80%. More than Atomif, Immortal, and Red Rush. Not bad for a guy who just explodes shits at his opponents. Rest well, King. Next is Monster Girl, and thank god we can move on from Fluxons. Amanda defeats Rex during the tryouts, but gets knocked out by Battle Beast later. Then we have Secrets and Dog Seismic, which are both wins, and finally the Mark variant, who does knock her out. 3 wins and 2 losses, getting her to 60% win rate. Shrinking Ray has a win at the tryouts, defeats the Goons, loses to Lizard League, and fights off Dog Seismic. That's actually all, giving her a fat 75% win rate. Shapesmith won against Secrets and Dog Seismic. After that, he lost 3 times in a row, to Maulers, to JC, and to No Goggles Mark. 40% win rate. Black Samson has almost the same fights, but he gets a win at the tryouts and then loses the Battle Beast instead of JC. 50% win rate. Bulletproof literally only has 3 fights in the entire show. Against Secrets, against Dog Seismic, and against Retromark. And while the first 2 were definitely wins, can we really call Bulletproof a loser when it comes to the Invincible War? We don't see him being overpowered or beaten by Mark. Bulletproof only leaves after Rex asks him to, so should we consider it fully in? Actually, yeah. After Rex explodes, we can see that Bulletproof can barely fly and is physically exhausted. There is no way it would normally take him 2 entire minutes to fly this distance, so I will mercilessly count it as a loss. Seriously though, Bulletproof is like the most worthless character in the show. He has no arc, he has no feats, he barely has any dialogue. Could you replace him in season 4 with like... me? Now, the last but not the least, Darkwing 2. In season 2 he lost to Mark and got sent to rehab, but in season 3 he absolutely carried everyone against Dog Seismic. Next he lost to Mauler Twins in a really embarrassing way, and finally took down No Goggles Mark. This guy only gets 50% win rate, but I hope to see him again in the future. He's like really cool. If we're talking about Guardians, we should also briefly mention GDA, and 3 people in particular. Cecil, Donald, and Sinclair. Donald has no on-screen wins or losses, so we will not rate him. Sinclair also had no physical fights with anyone, and we can't really judge the reanimate fights by our rules, so he also gets off the hook. Cecil is an extremely difficult case to analyze. According to our rules, a fight is a physical confrontation between 2 or more sides, and Cecil gets somewhat physical only twice in the entire show. When he tried to talk with Nolan during season 1, the only goal Cecil had was to stall Omni-Man. See, when your goal is to stall as long as possible, you a priori cannot lose. If you stalled for 10 seconds or 10 minutes, you succeed at your goal regardless. Also, as I said, Cecil almost never gets into fights directly. He always uses troops and other heroes to do the work, since he's just a normal human with no superpowers. The second time Cecil had a physical confrontation was in his flashback episode, where it's neither a loss nor a win. See, the thing with Cecil is that his objective is to minimize the damage, not to prevent it altogether. With all of this said, I hope you agree with me that Cecil cannot be ranked by metrics of this list. Now, let's talk about the strongest race in the universe, Viltrumites. Starting off with Vider and Tula, they both get defeated by our GOAT Nolan, but they did beat up poor Alan, which does count as a win, placing them at 50% win rate. Lucan, however, did defeat Omni-Man, giving him our first 100% win rate. He did only have one proper fight though. Both Thaddeus and Craig have no fights, landing them into no win rate category. Anissa brutally destroys Mark in season 2, but to be honest, she seems kinda reasonable when talking to him. I feel like Mark and her could become friends in the future. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Anissa gets 100% win. Wait a second. Physical confrontation? Check. Jokes aside, while it was a very short and one-sided fight, by letting Alan fake his defeat, Anissa indirectly helped him free Omni-Man and learn the Wiltern Empire's secrets, which is kind of a big yikes. Anissa never really defeated Alan and allowed him to complete his mission, which will have disastrous consequences for her side, so I dare to call it a loss. You can disagree with me, but I have 700 subscribers and you don't. So shush, she goes into the 50% win rate category. Let's finally analyze the strongest Wiltermite we've seen in the show so far, Conquest. In total, he fought 3 people: Mark, Oliver and Eve. None of them really fought at the same time, so we will look at 3 separate fights. Nobody's gonna deny that Conquest defeated Oliver. Let's be honest, my guy never had a chance, but the situation with Eve and Mark is not so straightforward. While Eve did get resurrected and blasted Conquest with her Kamehameha, Conquest didn't really suffer all that much. Oh, don't get me wrong, it definitely was painful, but as we see, he was still capable of defeating Mark if he locked in, which is honestly Conquest's biggest mistake. The only reason he lost to Mark is because he didn't take the fight seriously until the very end. I will give him 2 wins and 1 loss, putting Conquest at 66% win rate. Now, let's look at the youngest Wiltermite and his performance, Oliver.
Can't go that way for some What the hell? Purple guy!
Despite him only being 1 year old, this little guy does put work in. Oliver's first fight is with Mark against these 2 losers, and right off the bat this is really hard to call either a win or a loss. Oliver flies in, gets hit once, but then instantly bounces back almost totally undamaged. When he does that, the criminals are already caught, which is like... what do we even call this? Oliver took 1 hit and did nothing in that fight, but on the other hand the hit he took barely hurt. This probably was the hardest fight to analyze, but in the end I will call it a draw. While Oliver did not directly do anything to stop the 2 guys, he did work as a distraction for the jail guards to apprehend them. You could definitely count this fight as a loss or a win too, but I choose to go with a draw. Next is the elephant training, and as much as I want to count it as a win for Oliver, we don't see him defeating the elephant on screen, so sadly this fight won't count. Next, Oliver deals with Mauler twins, which the entire Guardians team didn't manage to do. Lol, during the Invincible War, thanks to some reinforcements, he managed to defeat the Condom Invincible, giving him his second win. He and the same heroes also defeated long-haired Mark. When the war was over, he and his brother apprehended Jesse, which I will also count as a win. Finally, he barely survived his encounter with Conquest and received a serious loss in this fight, giving him a pretty solid 80% win rate. And while it is a big loss, this punch is very impressive considering just how strong Conquest is. But do you know what is even stronger than Conquest? My love for you, dear viewer. Especially if you sub to my channel and showed my content to the only couple of friends you have in your life. But if you want special part of my boundless love, consider joining my Discord or supporting me on Ko-fi. All supporters get early access to my videos and some other stuff. Shilling segment done. Back to the video. We've now been through a lot of characters, but I still haven't touched up on 2 insanely strong guys, Alan and Battle Beast. Alan had 4 fights we can analyze. First is his fight against Mark, which turned out to be a misunderstanding, so I'll count it as a draw. Next is his quote-unquote fight with 3 Wiltermites that absolutely destroyed him. Then his short encounter with Anissa I already talked about, and finally his fight to free Nolan. Alan got 2 wins and 1 loss, landing him in 66% category. Battle Beast, well... that guy destroyed every single enemy he touched, and I don't think anyone in the show managed to deal any significant damage to him. Our second character was a 100% win rate. What about a third? Tech Jacket appeared during the Invincible War and defeated Mustache Mark, landing him 100% win rate. We see both the fight and aftermath on screen, so it counts. Before getting to the final chapter of the video, which is all versions of Invincible, let's quickly go for some of the background villains in the show. Dog Seismic won only once, against Mark and Eve, getting sad 25% win rate. This Kill Cannon guy has never won a single fight, also super lame name. Mauler twins fought Guardians and lost, then won against Robot by making him flee, defeated the new Guardians, and then lost to Oliver. Their fight against Mark in Season 2 is a draw, and I will explain why when we get to Mark's fights. 50% win rate for Maulers. Titan lost to Mark in the beginning of the show. He also had a short mission given him by Machine Head, where he got his first win. After that he used Invincible to take Machine Head's place in the order, giving him another win. Then, in Season 3, he uses Mark again, securing his family's safety and totaling at 75% win rate. Both Machine Head and Isotope haven't engaged in any physical fights themselves, so they both go in the no win rate category. Mr. Liu, however, did have a fight where he lost to Mark before getting killed by Machine Head, 0% win rate. Multiple got a drive with Rex, but then got knocked out by Mark right away. His first escape from the prison failed, but the second time was successful, and he got a win by outsmarting Eve. Also, I just realized I need to add another loss to Eve because of this. Multiple gets 33% win rate, and Eve loses 5 to hers. Jesse Pinkman aka Powerplex defeated Shapesmith, lost to Eve, and then lost to Mark after he tanked all of Jesse's energy. He gets a win during the Invincible War by frying Light Blue Mark to death, but then gets apprehended by our Mark and Oliver again. In total, Captain Cook gets 40% win rate. These two, I don't really give a shit, I'm not gonna bother ranking them. Finally, Angstrom Levy, who only had 2 fights so far, and both of them were with Mark. First time he lost really hard, but the second time is more nuanced. At this point, Mark's goal was to kill Angstrom, which he failed to do because Angstrom escaped through the portal. All the while, his invincible plan worked out successfully, causing chaos around the world. However, by escaping, Angstrom lost his chance to kill Prime Invincible, as well as his hand, and got basically enslaved by these creepy guys. I will consider it a draw, so neither Mark nor Levi gets a win out of this. Also, I'm not gonna consider this a fight. He trapped his opponents in a very dumb and badly written way. He didn't really defeat any of them. So our final villain of the day gets 0% win rate. Now, finally, let's talk about all the Invincibles, compare their feats and win rate. Is Prime Mark really the strongest one? Well, depends on how you look at it. God, this is gonna be really long and painful, but here we go, I guess. Prime Invincible, the character with the most fights in the show. Let's see how well he fares. Mark wins his first fight ever against Titan, defeats Kill Cannon, then takes another 2 dubs with Team Team against Fluxens. But things get a little more complicated for the third invasion. While Mark did get the shit beaten out of him, he was still conscious and I think he was still capable of fighting, so he gets 5 wins in a row. Then the Alan fight follows, which we already counted as a draw. After that, him and Eve fought Doc Seismic and won pretty easily. Now we get to Mark's first loss. Yeah, I don't think that counts as conscious, I'm not gonna lie. I don't think I'm gonna give Mark a win on this one. Next we have his first Rainiman fight. He did hold his own decently well against it, but the Rainiman unalived himself almost instantly. The second fight is definitely a win though. Then we have Hail Mary fight, which Mark actually managed to win. Even Omni-Man had more trouble with it. When it comes to fight with Omni-Man, as I said already, I consider it to be a draw, despite the enormous strength gap between Mark and his dad. Let's get to Mark's feats in Season 2. First is his fight against Maulers, which was very difficult for me to judge. At first, I wanted to give it to Maulers because they clearly overpowered Mark, but looking at some other fights, I actually decided to make it a draw. We've seen before that Mark is very durable, and he also has moments of stopping holding back, where he can easily tear through opponents even tougher than Maulers. I think if Angstrom didn't end the fight early, Mark would be hit with adrenaline and destroy the twins. It is just an assumption though, but Mark stayed conscious until the very end of the fight, and even after, so I will stick with counting it as a draw. Moving on, Mark defeated Doc Seismic for the second time and effortlessly took down Darkwing. After that, he defeated the Atlantis Kaiju and found out about the frequency weakness. Mark got beaten up by Fula and was saved by Omni-Man at the very last moment. But unlike with Fluxens, he was definitely in no condition to fight or even stand up, so per our rules, it's a loss for Mark. He does follow up with a win though, against the Sequits. Unfortunately, we definitely needed Mark to get beaten up by Viltrumite a second time this season, so Anissa shows up and stomps him into the ground. For the final fight of the season, Mark stops Angstrom and claims a win. And now, finally, the third season. Mark opens it by losing to these 2 losers, but does apprehend multiple, so I'll give him both a win and a loss. After that, the Doc Seismic fight happened, which he did lose in round 1, but got carried by Darkwing in the rematch. So again, 1 loss and 1 win. Next we have the fight with Cecil, and as I already said, no one really achieved their goal here. There's no winners in this confrontation. Well, except maybe for one. Mark gets another win fighting Magrand villains with Oliver, has a draw with King Immortal, and then barely defeats Leo Dragon. After that we have the fight with Jesse, where there are really no winners again, but according to our rules, Mark did restrict and stop Pinkman from killing him, so he does get a win. 5 final fights on the table. Are you ready? First, Mark defeats Mohawk variant, then he and Eve fight Omnimark and Hoodvincible, where Mark is forced to flee to save her. Cecil did send in Reaniman, meaning the fight was somewhat under control, so we will give Mark a draw here. The fight with Angstrom is unfortunately yet another draw, as I already said in Angstrom segment.
Oh man, so gross!
So true, Oliver. After that 2010 GC, landing Mark a win. Now, Mark's final battle. While Conquest absolutely dog-walked him, Mark was still capable of fighting to the very last moment, and Conquest attitude along with Eve's bullshit powers allowed Invincible to claim the win. So what's our total? How good did Mark do? 5 losses, 8 draws, and 21 wins. This gives Mark a win rate of 75%. With how badly he gets beaten up like every episode, I expected this number to be lower. Despite how tough his enemies are, Mark still prevails in the end. Now with Prime Invincible out of the way, I wanna make a small change for the rules. We won't count off-screen fights towards anyone's win rate, except Mark variants. Most of these guys have no feats on screen, because there's just not enough time for that in the episode. So, surviving the Invincible War will count as a win, and dying will count as a loss. I think it's fair to say that a guy trying to destroy capitals of the biggest countries on Earth will face some resistance from the government and superheroes around the world. So with that exception, let's get back to Marks. Light Blue Mark dies to Pinkman and does nothing else. Gripper's Mark dies off screen, and Bulletproof Mark dies to Reaniman. More frauds. Condom Invincible was defeated by Oliver and some other background heroes. Same for Long-Haired Mark, but he actually won a fight with some of the background heroes, so he's our first variant to get more than 0% win rate. Flaxen Mark dies to Reaniman, and Mustache Mark loses the tech jacket. Both of them are frauds. Retro Invincible actually didn't manage to kill anyone. As we established, Rex did a self-sacrifice. Same for Darkwing, meaning that No Goggles Mark essentially lost to the Guardians thanks to his sacrifice. Hoodvincible fought Mark and Eve, and I will give him a win on this one, but right after he gets defeated by Reaniman, unfortunately giving him 50%. Do you guys think Hooded Mark says slurs casually? Now we get the final 8 marks. All of them get a win for surviving the war. Stripe Vincible defeated this Night Guy, Business Baby, and Hulk knockoff, giving him 100% win rate. Gay Vincible defeated this Buff Man and survived, also giving him 100%. Stealth Vincible survived the war, but has no on-screen fights. Guess no one noticed him. Prisoner Mark survives the war and destroys... fuck. I live here, you know. Filter Mark also has no on-screen kills or wins, so he only gets a win for surviving the war. Omnivincible defeated Eve, made Primarch flee and escaped Reaniman, giving him a pretty fairly earned 100%. Mohawk Mark gets knocked out by our Mark and some other heroes. This punch and powerplex I will not count as anything, he is far more durable than that and we see him just fine at the end of the episode. Mohawk Mark did survive the war, giving him 50% win rate. Now the final variant of the show and the final character of this video, Sinister Mark. He fought the Iguana Guy and Best Tiger while bragging about killing his own Omni-Man, but we don't see any of them killed or at least defeated on screen, so he will only get his win for surviving the war. Damn, just looking at Sinister Mark makes me hungry for meat. No idea why. And I suppose that's all. This is how our final tier list looks like. And here is a more compacted version. Thank you for sticking till the end. It really means a lot to me and my channel. There might be some fights I've missed, but there's just a lot of them, okay? So please forgive me if I did. If you like my content, you should sub to see more stuff I'll post very soon. I'm a multi-fandom enjoyer as the kids say, so hopefully there's something else on my channel you like. Again, thank you for watching and have a